tell this story because we spent a lot of time talking about the Janus case. Obviously, came up quite a bit at the teachers union conference from last week. And incidentally, on Thursday of this week, we'll be running the interview I did with Randy Weingarten, the president of the American Federation of Teachers, at that conference. So the Janus case, just to remind you, Janus v. AFSCME, was a case where a worker, Mark Janus, who was working in Illinois as a state worker. Can't remember exactly what his job was in Illinois, but he argued, or I should say the case was that the case overturned a precedent in Abood from 1977 that said, even though unions cannot force people working in a union shop to pay dues, they are forced, because unions are mandated by law to be the sole representative in union shops. Workers are forced to pay agency fees. The union is negotiating on your behalf. It is built a complaints process and a resolution process, and that takes money, and you just have to pay for that. Otherwise, everybody would be a free rider and say, union, you negotiate on my behalf. I'm not going to pay for it, but I'll get the benefits of it. And the union is in a tough predicament because they are mandated to be the sole representative of the workers. Because if you're a county or you're a state or you're a municipality and you have hundreds or 10,000 workers or whatever it is, you don't have to negotiate with each one of them. And workers you negotiate with are happier and better workers than workers who are forced to just take or leave it. So Mark Janus, as an Illinois state worker, must be very happy today, right? Because he no longer is forced to even pay his agency fees for the union that is representing him. But oddly enough, Mark Janus has decided he no longer wants to work for the state. Mark Janus has announced he's quitting his job for a position with the conservative think tank that bankrolled his case.
Oh, you don't say.
The Janus will start August 1st with the Illinois Policy Institute as a senior fellow. He will be a senior fellow. I want you to put just a little bit of like a little flag next to that for a moment. Hold that in your head. He's a senior fellow. I want you to think about what a senior fellow does. We'll come back to it in a moment. He says, I've respected the work of the Illinois Policy Institute and the Liberty Justice Center since first connecting with them in 2015, he said in a statement. As I've worked with them more closely over the years, I've come to admire both the staff and the mission of the organizations. Every day, their staff is working to turn around the state of Illinois. Oh, so let me get this straight. You were working for the state of Illinois. You got what you wanted. Also kneecapped public sector unions across the country. And now you're not going to work for the state anymore. You're going to help the state by working for someone else in the private industry. I'm grateful for the opportunity to spend the remainder of my career doing something I believe in. This story from February 26th of 2018 is in Politico, I believe. And it's just a little paragraph. Talks about a breakfast meeting with reporters that Mark Janus had in the lead up to his case, where he's going to help Illinois workers get the yoke of agency fees off their backs. So So Janus, who is now, incidentally, a senior fellow, what do you think a senior fellow does?
Cashes checks.
No, honestly, like I mean, like when
Sort
you
of
hear
a
senior,
gentleman of leisure.
no. When you hear senior fellow, it is an
Well, it sounds
academic
like an
position,
academic title.
right?
You're doing
Like I'm gonna be doing
research, analysis, writing, maybe public appearances.
right, on presumably these topics.
Senior scab in charge of scabbing.
Exactly. So here's how it was reported. At a breakfast meeting with reporters Friday, Janus, soon to be senior fellow, wandered a bit off script. Far from denouncing collective bargaining as compelled political speech, right? Because they're arguing that that even those agency fees, that the argument in the case was that when a union collectively bargains with a state, it's bargaining with government. Therefore, it is inherently political because it's bargaining with government. And therefore, when you force someone to pay agencies fees for collective bargaining, you are not squashing their freedom of speech, but you're compelling speech. Remember, we interviewed Haley Sweetland Edwards years ago, and she talked about the weaponization of the First Amendment and how you were going to see corporations try and get out of regulations by saying, like, hey, you can't force me to tell, the government can't force me to tell my employees to wash their hands. You're forcing speech upon me. The government is forcing speech upon me. So that's what the nature of the Janus case was. But that's not what he said as to why he was waging this 3-year-long battle, right? He's been working with these guys since 2015. He's a senior fellow now, don't you know? I think unions have a place. Collective bargaining is beneficial to people and workers.
Right.
But where I draw the line is when somebody tells me that I have to pay something that I don't agree with. Like what? Janus didn't elaborate. But Politico's Andrew Hanna says Janus suggested that he opposed AFSCME, that's the union he worked for, using his fair share fee, or the agency fee, to support the presidential candidacy of Hillary Clinton. And he said he'd be troubled if his fair share fee went to any other candidate, whoever that candidate may be, without him being consulted, end quote. However, as all of you undoubtedly know, and as I've just said, the law that is in place in this country prior to the Janus holding already bars unions from using any agency fee for political purposes. They don't support any candidate or any political issue with agency fees. That formula has been worked out very specifically. It has been in place for over 40 years. It was in place for over 40 years. And it went specifically to just dealing with the collective bargaining. So Mark Janus, that sweet little public sector worker from Illinois, who was only out to help the people of Illinois, had no idea what the case he was about to bring that would kneecap public sector unions was even about. And now he's been rewarded because of his legalistic prowess, a senior fellow position at 2 conservative slush fund think tanks.
And he is turning over the tables in the swamp.
Well,
there you go.
To be fair, he probably can't go back to his job because everyone really hates him now for some reason.
I hope so. I hope he has no friends. I hope he really does find those people at their conservative think tank to be his type of guys and gals, because I hope he has no friends.
I mean, frankly, for the sort of mass backstab he did of like basically every single worker essentially in this country, but obviously particularly his colleagues in state employment, like I feel like his payoff should be more like, here's like a cocaine castle in like, like something
Right.
far more decadent to really match like the real destructiveness of
He's
his act.
just on a paid vacation now.
He's
done.
totally right.
He's done.
Right,
He's
clearly.
done. And believe
Clearly.
me,
Set for life.
That's
Being,
amazing, right? It's really probably.
I don't know
is,
if Mike
like,
Janus and I are the same age, but I certainly go for one of those bad boys.
Yeah, why should you let everyone in a union be kind of set for life when you could be extravagantly set for life
Exactly.
to the detriment of everyone else?
Maybe if he had the union negotiate for him, he could have gotten that job even if he didn't
Right.
become the plaintiff.
Right.
Yeah.
It probably isn't even that extravagant. I mean, I'm not, this is like a totally secondary conversation, but there really is something that is a very banality of evil payoff, right? Like, you're going to destroy unionism in a time of unparalleled, worse than medieval mass inequality and out of control capitalism. And your reward? A no-show senior fellow job.
Oh, it seems to be small bore.
Right, but that's kind of what I'm getting at. Like, where, like,
dude,
I would want
ask-
I would want like points in the company. Like, I would be like, how do I personally become a member of like the upper echelon of the 1% after screwing
Right.
over millions of my fellow
Right.
workers? Not like
It's
an upper middle
oh,
class.
I'm going to get $125,000
Yeah.
a year. I'm not going to have to show up.
Right.
For that, you want I want like $750,000.
That's what I'm saying.
And a one-time bonus of like $4 million that
And some Tom
stock
Price,
options.
some Tom Price style stock insight.
Well,
if you know what I'm saying.
You know what we got to do now is make him do what the Verizon "Can You Hear Me Now" guy did, where he went to Verizon and now he's doing Sprint stuff. It just
right.
makes him
now
more
he
valuable.
goes back.
Yep.
Except for
There's a redemption narrative.
there's a redemption narrative. Except for that doesn't work with the Supreme Court.
Well, if this doesn't speak to the intuitive correctness of anti-work politics, I don't know what does.
The correctness of anti-work politics.
Yeah, like this guy just doesn't want to fucking work it anymore, and now he doesn't have to.
Yes.
I like the way he says it too. Like, I connected with them a couple years ago, and they had a really interesting proposal where I filed a scumbag, frivolous lawsuit which would destroy unions in this country. And in exchange, I wouldn't have to work anymore. I thought this was a really innovative win-win proposal.
The union never negotiated, so I didn't have to work anymore.
That in the script version, there's just like flashbacks to multiple union meetings where he's like, "How? Where's the we don't do anything proposal? Sorry, Mark, we're still going to do our jobs. We just want dental care. You guys are losers."
Do you guys even know the kind of vacations I'm going to go on now?